Secretary of State Phil McGrane. Here we go for number 4, the election installment. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. We're less than a week till election day. It's awesome.
We are. It is coming like I have a lower degree of anxiety for this election than I ever have, and I'm just more excited than like than
you can
ever.
Feel the energy. Like the early voting turnout is high, and in our office, you can just feel the intensity, the energy, everything about the election right now.
When I've heard that early voting is high across the nation, what is actually happening in Idaho?
Yeah, we are experiencing the exact same thing. I think the presidential election in particular is really driving out turnout. I've talked to numerous county clerks all throughout the state, and everybody has longer lines than they've ever had before for early voting. And we're seeing it in the overall numbers. So as of yesterday, we have almost eclipsed the total number of voters in advance of the election than we had for the entire primary. If the trend continues, we will easily break records in terms of total number of voters that vote in this election, which I expected, but we're seeing it way earlier than normally do. I mean, people usually procrastinate and they wait till, the Thursday or Friday before the election. Instead, we've seen droves of people. I mean, I would suspect by the end of today, we'll have 300,000 ballots cast. I mean, that's short of 30% turnout for our election, which is pretty awesome.
Gosh, man, that's great. And again, the bulk of people classically vote on election day. So if
Idaho will still have the most turnout on next Tuesday. There's no question about that. So the fact that we're already this far along, I mean, now the question is just how high is the number going to get?
Right, because you have two ways of viewing it, right? You could view it as a zero-sum game where you're like, okay, if we have, let's say, collectively 1 million people, if we have more people vote early, we'll have fewer people vote in person. But if you view it as a proportional thing, it's like, no, we're up 30% in early voting. I think we'll be up 30% in same-day voting.
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination of the two. I can tell you from being in the clerk's office and the elections office, they hope it bleeds off some of the people on election day. It'll just make it smoother for everybody. Avoid any of those long lines, right at 5 o'clock. But I can't imagine that this energy doesn't continue in terms of just overall turnout being up.
First off, thank you for doing these shows with me.
This has been great. I think I can say the reach and the people that we've talked to, but getting the information out about our process, whether it's the paper ballots, the other things we've talked about, I will say we're feeling it. I think you're not just feeling more confident going into this election.
Yeah.
I think so many Idahoans are feeling more confident, and I really believe the dialogue we've had has contributed a lot to that.
I hope so. And again, it's been great. There are plenty of. I focus a lot on making clips of our conversations that have specific points. They might be entertaining if people find elections entertaining, but when you're making something that has to go up against the entertainment engine of YouTube or Instagram, and it's about, nuances of elections, it's really hard to make something that takes off. But many of the things that you've said articulating clear positions that Idaho takes, either with, hey, your California driver's license will not work to register to vote in Idaho, or that we, remove people constantly. And we did, in fact, find 36 people when you guys did an additional scrape across, all of Idaho voters that were registered to vote that should not be registered to vote. Like, these are things that are real that you guys are doing. And it's kind of pulling back the veil of, look, these are the workings of what we do. And people have a thirst for that. Like, it's wild to me that several of them are like 200,000-300,000 views. People are like, this is great. Like, way to go, Idaho. And like, yes, awesome.
I think lifting that curtain has been huge because so many people have really focused on that transaction at the polling location. And as you said, as we've talked about what's going on behind the scenes, all the additional people, activity, everything else, it hopefully is reassuring to folks.
Yeah, hopefully. So we have been doing these, but the big politician podcast was obviously Trump and Rogan.
Sure.
And fantastic. I don't know if you've listened to it, but it was one of those things where I listened to it. It's 3 hours and you're like, I've never heard this guy talk.
Have a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was there's no crowd, there's no nothing. And again, Rogan's a master at weaving the conversation and steering it. But one thing that Trump was talking about was that he's like, I talked to Elon. Right. I can't do a Trump impersonation, but he talks to Elon Musk, who's a big...
I won't do my Musk impersonation if you don't do your Trump one. How does that sound?
So bottom line is he was like, listen, I talked to Elon and asked, like, what's the only way to make this? Or like, how could we make voting secure? And his response was, you have to have paper ballots. He's like, anything connected to electronics will not work. You have to have paper ballots. And when I was listening to this, I was like, hit my knee. I'm like, We did it in Idaho
Like
because
we've got this. Yes.
We have every vote cast is a paper ballot. Now these are tabulated by in some counties, not all counties, but some counties. Most counties are tabulated by voting machines, not Dominion voting machines.
Right.
So we do have electronic voting tabulation, but we maintain the hard copy of every single ballot cast in Idaho. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's the same reason Elon Musk gets there. Is it's the common sense solution. We've talked about that. It's just the simplest way, especially in this era of technology. I mean, if you talk about somebody like Musk, who clearly knows technology incredibly well, there's so many risks and uncertainties. And so when we do those post-election audits that we're gearing up for right now, we will go and sort through and hand tally all of those paper ballots to verify that, yep, what that machine reported on election night, those were the official results, really instilling confidence for everybody that, yes, our elections are accurate.
I've spoken to a couple people recently that are worried about national results. And even though I say, hey, look, Idaho has a very, very secure system. Right. And I go through all the details and, some people still have misgivings. So like, that's fine. Yep. You can have whatever questions you want, and by the way, Matt doesn't have all the answers. Like I just talked to a guy who has answers and whatever, but they get really worried about, say something going on in Georgia or Arkansas or wherever, and, classically swing states. But the thing that I come back to is, listen, if we engage, and I'd like your opinion on this, but I try to engage almost exclusively with things concerning Idaho, because Idaho is the only thing I can affect. And Idaho is really the only thing I can come to understand. Like if I tried to understand Arkansas's election system from afar, it would be almost impossible. But keeping our house in order seems to be the only solution that I can come up with to people's anxiety about national things. Because if people in Arkansas also committed, they're like, listen, I won't worry about Idaho, but I will worry about Arkansas, and I promise to do the best I can to keep my house in order. It seems the solution to national anxiety is to think locally. Would you agree with that
I think there's
sentiment?
a big part, yes. And I think the work that we're doing, just gaining that information and understanding. So let's just go back to Elon Musk and the paper ballots. Like, oh, that makes sense. We should do that. And then we should say, like, okay, what is everybody else doing? Does everyone else have paper ballots? And I believe it's like 94% of the country will vote with an official paper record, just like we do. I'm part of the conversation trying to say, well, how do we get that to 100%? And I think we need to continue to advocate for that. But at the same time, as we understand how it works, we can better understand, like, okay, how is Arkansas or Georgia or whoever else doing it, and really look critically. I will say, talking to some of my peers in Georgia, I mean, they lived through hell and back 4 years ago, and you can see, if you look at the Heritage Foundation as a great example, they've beefed up a lot of the work that they're doing in anticipation that this would probably be another close election. And we can't relate, honestly. I can't tell you how grateful I am to live in Idaho, but more so how grateful I am not to live in a swing state right now.
Right.
The intensity, when you look at whether it's, President Trump in Georgia or Stacey Abrams in Georgia, that is an immense amount of pressure that those election officials are working under to try and make sure that it's accurate. I'm sure there will be recounts and audits and everything else in that state and in many other states. And so hopefully our country just continually is getting better at how we conduct these elections.
I like to believe that Idaho is the shining gem, right? And like we are it. But I don't know anything about what the rest of the country does. Is there anything that other people are putting in place? Because I have to assume at least some states have really looked at themselves and said, like, okay, we need to get better at this. Like, we need to move. Is there anything that other people are initiating that you can identify? You're like, okay, next time I don't think this is a problem, but it would be good to have this check or this balance or this safeguard in there.
Yeah, no, I think one of the biggest things that I'm experiencing, and has been really a lot of my tenure, is the unification of what all the counties are doing. So we have 44 different counties, everything from Clark County that has less than 350 voters to Ada County that has well over 300,000 voters, trying to make those more similar. One of the things Idaho, we certainly pride ourselves in is just our autonomy, whether that's as citizens of Idaho or also the various counties, is trying to say, all right, this is becoming more and more where we need to be working together. So that's first and foremost here in the state. And that's a lot of where our focus is how do we get the tools so that we can have confidence. Doesn't matter where you're doing this. the process is the same for a voter. So our electronic poll book implementation is a great example of that. That is going a long way to streamlining the process, making it easier for voters, more secure, and more consistent across the state. The other part of that is, we talk about voter roll maintenance all the time. One of the areas we're all grappling with and we need to continue to wrestle with, I know members of Congress I've spoken to are in this, is the information between the states. We do share a bunch of information. We work with our federal partners, but there's more we could be doing to, that Californian who moves to Idaho, you probably know one or two of them, like making sure that not only do we get them registered here in Idaho, but we get them removed from California's voter rolls. That's a lot of where we hear questions about things, and there's more work that can be done nationally on that front.
Yeah, but yes. And the people have been started posting shots of mail-in ballots from California. Mm-hmm. People that are residents here, they're like, this is my mom. She's been dead for 4 years.
I think I've probably seen the exact same images you have.
Yeah. And it's like, gosh, that's such a frustrating thing for a number of reasons. Right. But because that person lives here, that person now has less faith in elections. It's like, nope, you should not. I mean, Phil McGrane's not doing anything like Idaho's not sending those out. Right.
Right. And I will say, and I don't know California's system well enough, so I want to be very cautious here.
Yeah, right.
But I'm fairly confident they have a number of safeguards. Like if you tried to vote that ballot and send it in, like don't do that. It's a crime and you may be prosecuted. So, but that there are safeguards in place. Now, I can't relate to having the millions of voters that California does in processing, but I can say that, again, paper ballot records or not being connected to the internet. These are some basic practices that not only Idaho should be doing, but every state should be doing.
One thing that we haven't really talked about, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but you talked about unifying counties. It made me think of Alaska that doesn't have counties, made me think of ranked choice voting, made me think of Prop 1.
You talked about this a little bit over the past month.
A little bit. 7 episodes, 3 episodes for, 3 episodes against, 1 debate, which is fantastic. I give myself like a C, but the debate overall was good.
Were you debating?
No, I wasn't debating.
I like how you gave yourself a grade and you weren't even one of the debaters.
Yeah, but the camera angles and because I have to actually engage in the cognitive effort and then also set up everything and be like, is everything good? Like, is the audio good? Anyway, it'll be better. It'll be better next time. But what I wanted to ask just really quickly is there's a ticket cost associated with that your office has put out that it's like, hey, we estimate it could cost upwards of $25 to $40 million. Prop 1 passes. And a lot of people are like, that's too much. Like we're already running elections. And some people say that's too little. Some people feel it could actually be more. What would the top ticket items be associated with having something like that pass? And then
where does that number come from?
Where's the 25?
Yeah, like everyone asks, how did we get to that number? Really what it boils down to is the electronic election equipment that we use to produce and tally ballots. So to tally the votes, that is not currently capable of a ranked choice ballot. So we know that those systems could create one. They could create the image of one, but they could not actually read it and do the ranking. And all of the equipment we use goes through significant testing well before it ever even arrives in Idaho. So the United States Election Assistance Commission, I was a law clerk there many, many years ago. They do certification of equipment. They say, hey, states, we've run this through the ringer. Here's equipment that's viable. And there's a wide breadth of things in that front. Then our office also reviews all that equipment and certifies it before it's used at the county. The systems we have aren't compatible, whereas like when Alaska implemented it, they had already purchased a system that was compatible with ranked choice voting. That fundamentally is a difference. Alaska also, you alluded to it, runs elections at a state level. They don't have county government. So they already had a statewide implementation of a system that could do it where we don't. So how we came up with the number is that's what we've already spent on the equipment we currently have. Like elections aren't a small endeavor. It's not just the logistics. It's also like we really do take this seriously. We've invested a ton in the capital outlay of all the equipment we've purchased. And if Proposition 1 passes, I will be going to the legislature asking for funding to replace all the equipment. Some of that's going to be beneficial because it will upgrade counties that are overdue to replace their equipment anyways. But it's going to be a big change. It would also force We have 6 counties that count by hand right now. They never have used equipment. They would now have to use equipment. So there's 6 more counties. Also, it would force all the counties have to be the same. So Bear Lake County and Boundary County, totally at different ends of the state, you can't do the multiple rounds of voting until you can combine all the information together to be able to say, like, okay, now that we have these tied in, now we can do the multiple round sorting that you guys have talked about.
Sure. So bottom line is, I mean, like, that's a really, really good point, which is, I know it would cost close to this or around this because this is what I've already spent.
Yes.
So like, if you want me to replace this coffee cup, I know I spent $5 on the coffee cup. It's going to probably be another $5. And that guy doesn't even have a coffee cup, so we got to get him one. So to make it 10, put me down for 3, actually, make it 15.
But I think that's exactly how we got there. I mean, we did talk to the vendors.
Yeah, sure.
We talked to the state of Alaska. We did all our research, but you can appreciate this is going to be a competitive bid. The vendors aren't saying like, oh, here's my pricing so that they can be outbid by their competitors. Instead, we looked at that, and then we looked at, oh yeah, this is what I paid on a coffee mug. There's some inflation. People are probably familiar with that. Right. So that's why we have such a wide spread. 25 to 40 million, I recognize as a big spread. But until we did a competitive bid on a statewide project, there's no way we know for sure.
Listen to me. You've come in more than anybody. We meet
because I love it in here with you.
I really appreciate having you in, and we're meeting at 6:45 in the morning. Like, you never know what it's like Vegas in here. There's no clock. Like, I just get charged up when people come in. But I wanted to say thank you for the effort. You and I are gonna hopefully meet once more again, directly after the election. Hopefully with a beer and some barbecue, and just let our hair. I'll let my hair down. You do whatever you do.
I'll let my hair down.
There it is. Is there anything you'd like the voters of Idaho to know before this election next Tuesday? Because it's Wednesday right now. We're a week away. Here we go.
I'll just say, same to you. Like, thank you for the conversation. Like, you've mentioned the number of people watching some of the videos and the information we've spread. I can see it and feel it. People's confidence in Idaho is rising. I think, when we went we did the election summit, that was part of what we discussed. How do we reach people? The Ranch podcast is reaching people. So thank you. I think the biggest thing is make sure people vote. Like, this is an important election. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter what's on the ballot. People are always like, well, does it really matter? Absolutely. Like, we need people to be engaged. This is an important inflection point for our country. I hope that we get to see impressive turnout and that Idaho truly does shine when it comes to this election. So thanks for the conversation. And thanks to everybody watching for participating and, most importantly, voting in this election.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Thanks for what you're doing. I'm very excited. We'll have to do another one afterwards.
Okay.